Two broken souls walked into that room, one armored in power and wealth, the other barely holding herself together. Neither was looking for love. Both had given up on the idea that anyone could truly understand their pain. But when their worlds collided in those 60 seconds, something impossible happened. Hope flickered to life in two hearts that had forgotten how to dream. Today, you'll learn that vulnerability isn't weakness, and that choosing to feel again after betrayal takes more courage than staying numb. As we start the story, kindly like, share, and subscribe. Alessio watched her from across the velvet booth, his fingers motionless against the armrest. The other women had left, finally reading the disinterest in his expression. His cousin Stefano was still laughing about it, making crude jokes that bounced off Alessio without landing. But this new woman wasn't moving toward him with the same hunger. She looked exhausted, her dark curls escaping from a loose bun, her curves wrapped in a simple black dress that somehow made her more captivating than all the elaborate costumes before her. She stopped 3 feet away and met his eyes. The lady was not shy, not performing. She was just waiting. "Your friends paid for an hour," she said quietly, her American accent cutting through the Italian chatter around them. "But you don't look interested." Alessio felt his pulse shift for the first time in years. "I'm not." She nodded once, like she'd expected that answer. "Then I'll just sit here until the hour's done. They already paid." Something about her resignation touched a part of him he'd buried. "What's your name?" "Does it matter?" She sat down anyway, keeping distance between them, pulling her phone from a small purse. "It does now." She glanced up, studying him with eyes that had seen too much for someone so young. "Stephanie." Stephanie. It fit her somehow, the way the syllables felt in his mouth. Stefano leaned over, grinning. "She's got spirit, cousin. Maybe she'll be the one." Alessio ignored him, his attention fixed on the woman who wasn't trying to impress him. "How old are you?" 23. She tucked her phone away. "You don't have to make conversation. I know how this works." "I don't think you do." Alessio shifted slightly, and she tensed. He noticed. "How long have you been working here?" 3 months. Her voice was steady, but her fingers trembled slightly. "I needed money. School debt." Something fierce and protective moved through his chest. He didn't understand it, didn't question it. "You're American." "Detroit originally. Moved here 6 months ago for a fresh start." She laughed, but it held no humor. Worked out great, obviously. Alessio made a decision that would change everything. "You're done working here." Her head snapped up. "Excuse me." "After tonight, you're finished." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card, sliding it across the space between them. "Call that number. Tomorrow. My assistant will arrange something better." Stephanie stared at the card like it might bite her. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity. It's common sense." His voice dropped lower. "You don't belong here. You don't know me. I know enough." The hour passed in strange silence, neither of them speaking much, but something building in the space between them that felt larger than words. When the time ended, Stephanie stood, smoothing her dress. "I won't call," she said softly. "You will." Alessio watched her walk away, his chest tight with certainty he couldn't explain. By the next morning, Alessio sat in his office overlooking Milan, the city spreading beneath him like a kingdom he'd built from blood and ruthlessness. His phone rang 3 times before his assistant answered. "Find out everything about an American woman named Stephanie," he said without greeting. "Works at the club on Via Dante. I want her background, her debts, her family, everything." He hung up before hearing the response. This wasn't normal for him. Since his wife's betrayal 15 years ago, since he'd discovered her in their bed with his former business partner. since he'd destroyed them both and sworn off emotional entanglements. He'd been careful, controlled, cold. But something about Stephanie had cracked that control. The report arrived by afternoon. 23 years old, nursing student before dropping out, parents dead in a car accident 2 years ago, $70,000 in combined student and medical debt, no criminal record, no connections to his world. Clean, innocent, fragile in ways that made his protective instincts roar to life. She hadn't called. Alessio stared at his phone, willing it to ring, then cursed himself for the weakness. He had empires to run, enemies to manage, business deals worth millions. One small American woman shouldn't occupy this much space in his thoughts. His phone buzzed. Not her. Stefano. The shipment arrives tonight. Your presence is required. Alessio closed his eyes briefly. I'll be there. But later that evening, standing in the warehouse watching his men unload crates, his mind drifted. He kept seeing Stephanie's tired eyes, her quiet dignity, the way she'd refused his help even though she clearly needed it. Boss. One of his men approached carefully. Everything's accounted for. Good. Alessio checked his watch. Midnight. She'd be at the club now, letting strangers look at her, touch her, reduce her to something she wasn't. The possessiveness that crashed through him was irrational and overwhelming. He left the warehouse, ignoring Stefano's confused questions, and drove to Via Dante. The club pulsed with music and artificial light. Alessio walked past the doorman who immediately stepped aside, recognition and fear flickering across his face. Inside, smoke and perfume and desperation hung thick in the air. Alessio scanned the room methodically until he found her. Stephanie was on a small stage, moving without enthusiasm, her eyes distant. A man near the front was reaching toward her ankle. Alessio moved before thinking. He crossed the floor in seconds, grabbed the man's wrist, and applied just enough pressure to make his point without breaking bones. Don't touch her. The man paled, recognizing him. Signor Moretti, I didn't know. Now you do. Alessio released him and turned to Stephanie, who had frozen mid-movement. Come down. She blinked, confusion and something else, relief maybe, crossing her features. I'm working. Not anymore. Come down. His voice left no room for argument. Stephanie climbed down carefully, and Alessio removed his jacket, draping it over her shoulders before she could protest. The crowd had gone silent, watching, but no one dared interfere. He guided her toward the back exit, his hand at the small of her back, not pushing, just present. Once outside in the cool night air, she turned on him. What are you doing? Her voice shook. I'll get fired. You're already fired. I bought out your contract an hour ago. Alessio watched her process that information. You work for me now. I didn't agree to that. You will. He stepped closer, not touching, but close enough to feel her warmth. I'm offering you a legitimate job, Stephanie. Administrative work. No dancing, no strangers, no degradation. Good salary, benefits, respect. Tears filled her eyes, and she looked away quickly. Why? Because I can. Because you deserve better. Because something in you called to something in me, and I'm too selfish to ignore it. She wrapped his jacket tighter around herself. I don't understand you. You don't have to. Just say yes. What if I say no? Alessio smiled slightly, though it held no warmth. Then I'll find another way to help you. But it'll be easier if you cooperate. Stephanie studied him for a long moment, searching for something in his expression. Whatever she found made her shoulders relax, slightly. Okay. Okay? I'll take the job. She met his eyes. But I'm not sleeping with you. Something warm moved through his chest. I never asked you to. Men like you always want something. I do want something. Alessio took a careful step back, giving her space. I want to know you're safe. I want to see you away from places like this. I want to understand why you affect me like this when nothing has affected me in 15 years. Her breath caught audibly. You're honest, at least. Always. It was true. Brutal honesty was one of his few remaining virtues. My driver will take you home. Be at this address tomorrow at 9. He handed her another card. My assistant will handle the paperwork. Stephanie looked at the card, then back at him. This is crazy. Yes, I should run. Probably. But I won't. She smiled, just barely, and it transformed her face into something that made his heart stutter. I'll see you tomorrow, Signor Moretti. Alessio, corrected quietly. Just Alessio. She walked toward his waiting car, his jacket still wrapped around her shoulders, and Alessio stood in the alley watching until she disappeared from sight. Then he pulled out his phone and called his assistant. The woman starts tomorrow. Set her up with an office on my floor. Background check, complete security clearance. I want her close. Understood, sir. Anything else? Pay off her debts. All of them. Quietly. He hung up before hearing the confirmation. This was madness, he knew. Bringing her into his world, into his life, when his world was built on violence, and his life was designed to keep everyone at a distance. But something had awakened in that private room last night, something that refused to go back to sleep. For 15 years after his wife's betrayal, Alessio had been a ghost in his own life, existing, operating, building his empire, but never truly living, never feeling. He'd perfected the art of emotional absence, of being present without being vulnerable. Stephanie had shattered that in 60 seconds. He drove home to his penthouse, the city lights blurring past, and allowed himself to acknowledge the truth. He was already obsessed with her, already planning ways to keep her close, keep her safe, keep her in his life, already imagining futures that had seemed impossible yesterday. It was dangerous, this feeling. Dangerous for him, and probably more dangerous for her. But Alessio had never been good at denying himself what he wanted, and he wanted Stephanie with an intensity that bordered on madness. The next morning arrived with golden sunlight cutting through his windows. Alessio dressed carefully, choosing a black suit that made him look slightly less intimidating, though he knew nothing could truly soften his presence. Years of controlling an empire had carved authority into his bones. By 8:45, he was in his office, pretending to review contracts while actually watching the elevator bank through his glass walls. At 8:58, the doors opened, and Stephanie stepped out. She'd dressed professionally, dark pants, cream blouse, her curls pulled back. But she looked nervous, her eyes scanning the sleek, modern space like she might bolt at any second. Alessio's assistant, Elena, greeted her warmly and guided her toward his office. He stood as they approached, muscle memory from a lifetime of manners his mother had drilled into him. Stephanie, he nodded. Elena will show you to your office and explain your duties. I thought I'd be working for your assistant, Stephanie said carefully. You're working for me directly. Alessio kept his expression neutral. Is that a problem? I don't know yet. She followed Elena, glancing back once before disappearing around the corner. Alessio sat down heavily, running a hand over his face. He was 55 years old, powerful enough to destroy cities, experienced enough to know better. And here he was, acting like a schoolboy because a 23-year-old woman looked at him with those deep brown eyes. The morning passed slowly. He caught glimpses of Stephanie through his glass walls as Elena trained her on the computer systems and office protocols. She was quick, he noticed, asking intelligent questions, taking notes, adapting. Around noon, Elena knocked on his door. She's doing well. Very bright. Good. Alessio didn't look up from his paperwork. Make sure she takes a proper lunch break. Actually, she asked if she could eat at her desk. She seems uncomfortable in the employee lounge. Of course she did. Alessio stood abruptly. I'll handle it. He found Stephanie at her desk, a sad-looking sandwich from the vending machine in front of her. She jumped when he appeared in her doorway. That's unacceptable, he said, gesturing at the sandwich. It's fine. It's garbage. Alessio pulled out his phone and sent a quick text. Come with me. I have work, which can wait 30 minutes. He started walking, confident she'd follow. She did, after a moment of hesitation. He led her to the building's rooftop terrace, a private space reserved for executives. The city spread around them, beautiful and chaotic, and a table had already been set up with proper food: pasta, salad, bread, fruit. Stephanie stared. You texted them 5 seconds ago. I texted them this morning. Alessio pulled out a chair for her. I knew you'd try to skip lunch. She sat slowly, suspicion and something else. Gratitude, maybe, warring on her face. You barely know me. I'm learning. He sat across from her, not touching his own food, just watching her. Eat. Bossy. Yes. Stephanie picked up her fork, and for a few minutes, they sat in comfortable silence. The wind moved through her hair, loosening a few curls, and Alessio found himself memorizing the moment. Why are you really doing this? She asked finally. I told you last night. No, you told me what you want. Not why. She set down her fork. Men like you don't rescue women like me without a reason. Men like me? His voice cooled slightly. Powerful. Rich. Connected. She didn't flinch from his gaze. I did some research this morning. Alessio Moretti, import-export business, real estate, restaurants, very successful, very private, very careful about who you let close. Smart. He appreciated her directness. What else did you learn? That you were married once, that she died in a car accident 15 years ago. Stephanie's voice softened. I'm sorry. Alessio's jaw tightened. The official story was an accident. The truth was messier. His men had arranged it after he'd discovered his wife's betrayal, after she'd tried to steal from him and run away with his former partner. He'd never ordered her death specifically, but he hadn't stopped it either. That guilt lived in him like a second heartbeat. She didn't die, he said quietly. She was killed. By my enemies. Was close enough to the truth. Stephanie's eyes widened. That's terrible. It taught me to be careful. He leaned back, studying her. To trust no one. To keep my distance from anything that could be used against me. Then why am I here? Because apparently, I'm not as smart as I thought. The admission cost him, but her small smile made it worthwhile. They finished lunch in easier silence, and when Alessio walked her back to her office, he let his hand brush against hers briefly. The contact sent electricity up his arm. Stephanie felt it too. He saw her breath catch, saw her pull away quickly. Not ready. He could be patient. The afternoon brought meetings and conference calls that usually held his complete attention. Today, he found himself distracted, checking his watch, finding excuses to walk past Stephanie's office. At 6, Elena poked her head in. Stephanie's still working. Should I send her home? I'll do it. Alessio closed his laptop and walked to her office. She was frowning at her computer screen, typing quickly. It's after 6, he said from the doorway. She jumped again. Sorry, I was just finishing. Go home, Stephanie. But I'm not done. It'll be there tomorrow. He stepped inside, close enough to see the exhaustion in her eyes. You've done enough for your first day. She saved her work and stood, gathering her things. Thank you. For lunch. And for this job. I know I haven't said that properly. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. She looked up at him, and the distance between them felt charged. This changes everything for me. You probably don't realize how much." Alessio did realize. He knew exactly how much power he held over her life now, how easily he could hurt her, how carefully he needed to move. "Let me drive you home. I can take the train." "I know you can. Let me drive you anyway." Stephanie hesitated, then nodded. They rode the elevator down in silence, and his driver was waiting with the car. She slid into the back seat, and Alessio joined her, maintaining careful distance. "Where do you live?" She gave an address in a neighborhood he knew was rough. His jaw tightened. "How long have you lived there?" "Since I moved here. It's affordable. It's dangerous. I can handle myself." Alessio made a mental note to have his men keep watch on her building, discreetly. She'd be furious if she knew, but her safety mattered more than her pride. They pulled up to a worn apartment building, graffiti marking the walls, and Alessio's protective instincts went into overdrive. "Thank you for the ride," Stephanie said, reaching for the door handle. "Wait." He pulled out his phone and handed it to her. "Put your number in." "Why?" "In case you need anything. In case there's an emergency. In case I need to hear your voice." She typed in her number and handed it back. "Good night, Alessio." "Good night, Stephanie." He watched her disappear into the building before instructing his driver to circle back. Then he called his head of security. "I need a team on this address. 24-hour surveillance. No one threatens her. No one approaches her. No one makes her uncomfortable. Invisible protection." "Understood, sir." "The woman from today?" "Yes." Alessio ended the call and stared at the building. This was madness. Obsessive. Possessive. Everything he'd sworn not to become again. But Stephanie had awakened something in him that refused to be reasoned with. By the end of the week, Alessio had learned several things about Stephanie. She arrived 15 minutes early every day. She brought her lunch from home, simple sandwiches that made him frown. She was brilliant with details, catching errors in reports that 3 other people had missed. She deflected personal questions while asking thoughtful ones about his business. And she was running from something. He noticed it in small things. How she flinched when men approached too quickly. How she checked over her shoulder constantly. How she never talked about her time in Detroit or why she'd really moved to Italy. Friday afternoon, Alessio made a decision. He called her into his office. Stephanie entered cautiously, notepad in hand, professional and distant. It frustrated him, that distance, even though he understood it. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. She sat, spine straight, waiting. "You're doing excellent work," Alessio started. "Thank you." "Elena is impressed. So am I." "I appreciate that." Her fingers tightened around her notepad. "Is there a problem?" "Yes." He stood and moved to the window, hands in his pockets. "You're not comfortable here yet. You're competent, but you're tense, waiting for something bad to happen." Stephanie was quiet for a long moment. "I'm fine." "You're lying." He turned to face her. "I want to help, but I can't if you won't trust me." "Why do you care?" The question burst out of her, raw and real. "I'm just some woman you met at a club, some charity case you're helping. Why does it matter if I'm tense?" "Because when you're afraid, I feel it in my chest. Because your pain calls to something in me that I thought was dead. Because you've become important in 5 days, and I don't know how to stop it." "Because you matter," he said simply. Tears filled her eyes, and she looked away quickly. "You don't know me well enough to say that." "Then let me know you better." Alessio moved closer, crouching down so they were eye level. "Have dinner with me tonight. Not as your boss, just as someone who wants to understand you." "That's not appropriate." "I don't care about appropriate." His voice dropped. "I care about you. And I think you feel something too, even if you're fighting it." Stephanie met his eyes, and the vulnerability there nearly broke him. "I'm scared." Of me? Of this? Of how fast everything is changing? Of what you make me feel? She stood abruptly, putting distance between them. I should go. Stephanie. He caught her wrist gently, feeling her pulse race beneath his fingers. One dinner. If you hate it, I'll never ask again. I'll be just your boss, nothing more. She stared at his hand on her wrist, and he felt her resistance crumbling. Okay. One dinner. Alessio released her, fighting the urge to pull her closer. I'll pick you up at 8. She nodded and left quickly, and Alessio exhaled slowly, feeling like he'd won something important. That evening, he changed 3 times before settling on a dark blue suit. No tie, trying to look less intimidating. His driver took him to her apartment building at 7:55, and Alessio stood outside her door at exactly 8, heart pounding like he was 20 again. Stephanie opened the door, and Alessio forgot how to breathe. She wore a simple black dress that hugged her curves, her hair loose around her shoulders, minimal makeup, highlighting features that needed no enhancement. She was devastating. Hi, she said softly. Hi. He cleared his throat. You're beautiful. She ducked her head, a shy smile playing at her lips. Thank you. You clean up nice, too. They drove to a small restaurant Alessio owned, tucked away from the main streets, intimate and quiet. He'd arranged for a private table in the back, candles casting soft light across white linens. This is lovely, Stephanie said, settling into her seat. I'm glad you like it. Alessio ordered wine and watched her relax, degree by degree as they talked. She told him about her parents, how her mother had been a teacher, her father a mechanic, how they died when a drunk driver ran a red light 2 years ago, how she'd dropped out of nursing school to manage their medical debts and funeral costs. I came here to start over, she admitted quietly, to get away from the memories. But I just ended up in a different kind of trap. You're free now, Alessio said firmly. Am I? She met his eyes. Or did I just trade one cage for another? The question cut deeper than she knew. You can leave any time. I meant what I said. The job is real. No strings. Except the ones I'm tying myself into. Stephanie took a sip of wine. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone colder. More demanding. Someone who'd have an agenda. She paused. You might still have an agenda. But you're also kind. Protective. You actually listen when I talk. You're worth listening to. They talked through dinner, conversation flowing easily once Stephanie's walls came down. She was funny, he discovered, with a dry wit that caught him off guard. She was curious about his business, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than polite conversation. By the time dessert arrived, Alessio knew with absolute certainty that he was falling for this woman. Not just attraction, not just obsession. Something deeper, more dangerous, more real. Tell me about your wife, Stephanie said, suddenly. The question should have shut him down. Instead, surrounded by candlelight and her open expression, Alessio found himself talking. Isabella. We married young. I was 28. She was 25. My family arranged it, merging 2 business empires. He stared at his wine glass. I thought I loved her. Maybe I did at first. But she never loved me. She loved what I could give her. The money, the status, the power. That must have hurt. What hurt was discovering her with my business partner in our bed. What hurt was realizing she'd been stealing from me for months, planning to disappear with him. Alessio's voice hardened. What hurt was being a fool. Stephanie reached across the table and took his hand. The gesture was simple, but it cracked something open in his chest. You weren't a fool, she said softly. You trusted someone you loved. That's not weakness. It got her killed. The words came out before he could stop them. Stephanie's eyes widened. What? My enemies found out about the affair, about her plans. They used it against me, went after her to hurt me. The lie came easily after 15 years of practice. She died because she was connected to me. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? Alessio turned his hand over, threading his fingers through hers. Everything I touch, I destroy. Everyone who gets close to me ends up hurt. You should run from me, Stephanie, while you still can. Maybe I should. She didn't pull her hand away. But I don't want to. The admission hung between them, heavy and honest. Alessio stood, still holding her hand, and pulled her gently to her feet. Dance with me, he said, though there was no music playing. There's no music. There's always music. He drew her close, one hand at her waist, the other still clasping hers, and they swayed slightly in the empty restaurant. Stephanie rested her head against his chest, and Alessio closed his eyes, breathing in her scent, something floral and warm that he'd already memorized. This moment felt stolen, fragile, like it might shatter if either of them spoke. I'm terrified of you, she whispered. I know. Not because you're dangerous, because of how you make me feel. She pulled back to look at him. Like I could trust you. Like I could fall for you. Like you might actually catch me if I did. Alessio cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing her cheeks. I would catch you. I'd destroy anyone who tried to hurt you. I'd burn down my entire world to keep you safe. That's what scares me. But she leaned into his touch anyway. He kissed her forehead, gentle and restrained, when what he wanted was to claim her mouth and never let go. But Stephanie needed slow, needed careful, needed to know she was more than just desire to him. They left the restaurant late, the streets of Milan quiet around them. In the car, Stephanie sat close to him, their shoulders touching, and Alessio felt something settle in his chest, something that felt dangerously like peace. At her building, he walked her to her door. Thank you for tonight, Stephanie said, key in hand. It was perfect. It was just the beginning. Alessio brushed a curl behind her ear. I want more nights like this, more conversations, more time with you. As my boss or as something else? As whatever you'll let me be. She smiled, rising on her toes to kiss his cheek. The touch was innocent, but it set fire to his blood. Good night, Alessio. Good night, Bellissima. He waited until she was safely inside before returning to his car. Then he called his security team. Report. All quiet, sir. No incidents this week. Good. Maintain surveillance. He paused. And I want a full background check on everyone in her life. Friends, neighbors, acquaintances, anyone who might be a threat. This was madness. Obsessive. Possessive. Wrong. But when it came to Stephanie, Alessio was discovering he had no intention of being reasonable. By Monday morning, Alessio had Stephanie's apartment under full surveillance, her building's security upgraded without her knowledge, and a complete dossier on every person she'd interacted with in Milan. Nothing suspicious appeared except her isolation. She had no friends here, no support system, no one watching out for her. Except him now. Stephanie arrived at work wearing a soft yellow blouse that made her skin glow, and Alessio found himself staring through his glass walls more than he cared to admit. She caught him once and smiled, a small secret thing that made his heart stutter. Around 10, she knocked on his door. Come in. She entered carrying a file. The Henderson contract. You asked for it by noon. Thank you. He took the file but didn't open it. How was your weekend? Quiet. I caught up on sleep. She shifted her weight. Thought a lot about Friday night. Good thoughts, I hope. Confusing thoughts. Stephanie met his eyes. You make me feel things I'm not ready for. Take whatever time you need. Alessio stood, moving closer, but not crowding. I'm not going anywhere. That's what worries me. She backed toward the door. Men always say that. Then they leave. Before he could respond, she was gone. Alessio stared after her, frustration and understanding warring in his chest. Someone had hurt her badly. Some man had made promises and broken them, and now she carried that wound like armor. He called his investigator. The report on Stephanie. I need more detail. Past relationships. Anyone who might have hurt her. Sir, that's quite invasive. I don't care. I need to know what I'm dealing with. He softened his tone slightly. To protect her, not to use against her. Understood. I'll have it by tomorrow. The rest of Monday dragged. Alessio tried to focus on work, negotiations with a distributor in Naples, contract reviews for a new property development. But his mind kept circling back to Stephanie. She was scared of being left, which meant someone had left her, abandoned her when she needed them most. The thought made him want to break things. Tuesday morning brought rain and the investigator's report. Alessio read it in his office, fury building with each paragraph. Her last boyfriend in Detroit, a man named Travis Mitchell. They'd dated for 2 years while Stephanie was in nursing school. He'd been supportive, loving, present, right up until her parents died. Then he'd left within a week, claiming he couldn't handle her grief and needed someone more positive. He'd left her alone to handle funeral arrangements, medical debts, and her own trauma. Alessio's hands shook as he closed the file. Finding Travis Mitchell and making him regret his existence would be easy. Satisfying, completely against Stephanie's wishes if she ever found out. But knowing what had hurt her helped Alessio understand her fear. She'd been abandoned in her darkest moment. No wonder she was terrified to trust again. He called her into his office around noon. I need you to accompany me to a business dinner Thursday night, he said when she entered. Stephanie blinked. As your assistant? As my date. He watched her process that. Important clients will be there with their wives. It would help to have someone with me. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? I want you to be yourself. Alessio leaned back in his chair. But yes, we'd be presenting as a couple. She worried her bottom lip, and he forced himself not to stare at her mouth. I don't have anything appropriate to wear. That's easily solved. He pulled out his phone and texted his assistant. Elena will take you shopping this afternoon. Company card. Get whatever you need. Alessio, that's too much. It's business. His voice left no room for argument. You'll be representing my company. You should look the part. Stephanie studied him. Suspicion and something else. Pleasure, maybe. Flickering in her eyes. This feels like more than business. It is more than business. He stood and walked around his desk. I told you Friday night. I want more. This is me pursuing more. But I'll take whatever you're comfortable giving. She swallowed hard. What if I'm not comfortable with any of this? Then you tell me to stop, and I will. He stopped a foot away from her. But I don't think that's what you really want. You're very confident. I'm old enough to recognize when something is worth fighting for. His voice dropped. And you're worth it, Stephanie. Even if you don't see that yet. She left without answering, but he caught the faint blush on her cheeks. That afternoon, while Stephanie was shopping with Elena, Alessio's cousin Stefano appeared in his office unannounced. The American woman, Stefano said without preamble, you're getting attached. That's not your concern. It is when it affects business. Stefano sat without being invited. You're distracted, making decisions based on emotion. That's dangerous for someone in your position. Alessio's expression hardened. I'm aware of my position. Are you? Because word is spreading. People notice when Alessio Moretti suddenly has a woman working in his private office. When he buys out her club contract, pays off her debts, takes her to dinner. Stefano leaned forward. They're starting to ask questions. Let them ask. Some of those questions come from enemies who'd love a weakness to exploit. Stefano's voice turned serious. She could be a target, cousin. You of all people should remember what happened last time you cared about someone. The reminder of Isabella hit hard, but Alessio kept his expression neutral. Stephanie is nothing like Isabella. That's not the point. The point is she's vulnerable, and you're making her more vulnerable by pulling her into your world. Then I'll protect her. Stefano sighed. You can't protect everyone all the time. Eventually someone gets hurt. After Stefano left, Alessio stood at his window, staring at the city below. His cousin was right about the danger, wrong about what to do about it. Letting Stephanie go wasn't an option, not anymore. So he'd just have to be better at protecting her than he'd been at protecting Isabella. Thursday evening arrived with clear skies, and Alessio's nerves stretched tight. The business dinner was real. Japanese investors considering a joint venture. But his focus was entirely on seeing Stephanie. His driver picked her up at 7, and when she emerged from her building, Alessio's breath stopped. The dress Elena had helped her choose was deep emerald green, fitted through the bodice and flowing at the skirt, elegant without being revealing. She'd left her hair down, curls cascading over her shoulders, and wore minimal jewelry. She was stunning. "Hi," she said softly, sliding into the car. "You're breathtaking." Alessio couldn't take his eyes off her. She blushed, looking down. "Elena has good taste." "No, Stephanie, you're beautiful. The dress just highlights what was already there." They drove to the restaurant in comfortable silence, and Alessio briefed her on the clients they'd be meeting. "Just be yourself. Answer questions honestly if they ask about your background, but you don't have to share anything you're uncomfortable with." "What should I say we are?" She gestured between them. "If they ask." "The truth." He took her hand. "We're dating, seeing where things go." Her fingers tightened around his. "Are we?" "I am, if you'll let me." Stephanie was quiet for a moment. "I'm scared, Alessio, of getting hurt, of this being temporary, of you realizing I'm not what you want." He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "I'm 55 years old. I've had relationships, affairs, arrangements. None of them felt like this. None of them made me want to be better, to protect, to commit. You do. That's not temporary." "How can you be sure?" "Because I know myself, and I know that what I feel for you is different." He held her gaze. "I can't promise I won't make mistakes. I can't promise this will be easy, but I can promise I won't leave. I won't abandon you when things get hard." Tears filled her eyes. That's all I needed to hear. The dinner was held in a private room at an upscale restaurant overlooking the Duomo. The Japanese investors, Mr. Tanaka and his wife, along with their translator, were already seated when Alessio and Stephanie arrived. Introductions were made, and Mrs. Tanaka immediately warmed to Stephanie, asking about her background and interests. Stephanie handled it beautifully, her natural warmth and intelligence shining through. Alessio watched her charm his potential business partners, pride swelling in his chest. She fit here, in his world, better than he'd imagined possible. Midway through dinner, a commotion near the entrance drew attention. Alessio tensed, instincts, immediately alert, but relaxed slightly when he recognized the newcomer. Marco Giordano, a business rival. Not quite an enemy, but definitely not a friend. Marco spotted their table and smiled, making his way over. "Alessio, I heard you were dining here tonight." Alessio stood, shaking Marco's offered hand with carefully measured pressure. "Marco, what brings you here?" "Business, as always." Marco's eyes slid to Stephanie, interest lighting his features. And who is this lovely woman? Stephanie. Alessio moved slightly, positioning himself between them. My girlfriend. The possessive declaration hung in the air, and Stephanie's eyes widened slightly at the label. Charming. Marco stepped around Alessio, extending his hand to Stephanie. Marco Giordano, a pleasure to meet you. Stephanie shook his hand politely. Nice to meet you, too. American? Marco's smile widened. How delightful. And how did you meet our Alessio? At a club, Stephanie said truthfully, and Alessio suppressed a wince. He offered me a job. How generous of him. Marco's tone suggested something else entirely. Alessio has always had excellent taste. Jealousy burned hot and vicious in Alessio's chest. He'd felt it before, once, when he'd caught his wife flirting with another man at a gala. But this was different, sharper, more possessive. We're in the middle of dinner, Alessio said, voice cool. If you'll excuse us. Marco raised his hands in mock surrender. Of course. Enjoy your evening. He leaned closer to Stephanie, voice dropping. If you ever tire of Alessio's intensity, give me a call. He placed a business card next to her plate and walked away. The moment Marco was out of earshot, Alessio picked up the card and pocketed it, his jaw tight. Alessio, Stephanie said quietly. He was disrespectful. He was flirting. It's not a big deal. It is to me. Alessio met her eyes, not bothering to hide the possessiveness. You're mine, Stephanie. I don't share. Something flashed in her expression. Not fear, but awareness. I'm not your property. No, you're not. He softened slightly. But you are important to me. And watching another man proposition you makes me want to break things. That's not healthy. I never claimed to be healthy. He took her hand under the table. I claim to be honest. The rest of dinner passed without incident, though Alessio remained hyper-aware of every man who looked at Stephanie. The meeting with the Japanese investors went well, business terms agreed upon, but he barely paid attention. In the car afterward, Stephanie was quiet. I'm sorry, Alessio said finally, for my reaction to Marco. You don't seem sorry. I'm sorry it made you uncomfortable. I'm not sorry for how I feel. He turned to face her. I know it's possessive. I know it's probably too much, too soon. But I don't know how to be casual about you. Stephanie studied him in the dim light of the car. No one's ever claimed me like that before. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. She touched his face, her fingers gentle against his jaw. It's intense. Everything with you is intense. I can try to dial it back. Don't. She leaned closer. I like knowing how you feel, even if it scares me. Alessio captured her hand, pressing it against his cheek. You undo me, Stephanie. You make me feel things I swore I'd never feel again. Good things? Terrifying things. Wonderful things. He turned his head, kissing her palm. You make me want to be the man you deserve. She kissed him then, soft and tentative, and Alessio held himself perfectly still, letting her control the moment. Her lips were warm and sweet, and when she pulled back, his heart was pounding. Take me home, she whispered. Your place or mine. Yours. The drive to his penthouse was silent and charged. Alessio kept her hand in his, thumb tracing circles on her skin. When they arrived, he led her inside, giving her time to look around at the modern space, all clean lines and expensive art, and windows overlooking the city. It's beautiful, Stephanie said softly. It's empty. Alessio moved closer. Until now. She turned to him, vulnerability and desire warring in her expression. I've never done this before. Not like this. Done what? Wanted someone the way I want you. Been scared and excited at the same time. She touched his chest, fingers spreading over his heart. I don't know what I'm doing. Neither do I. He covered her hand with his. We'll figure it out together. Alessio kissed her slowly, deeply, pouring 15 years of loneliness and a week of obsession into the contact. Stephanie responded, her arms winding around his neck, her body pressed against his. He walked her backward to his bedroom, never breaking the kiss, and when they reached the bed, he pulled back to look at her. Are you sure? His voice was rough. Yes. Her hands moved to his jacket, pushing it off his shoulders. I'm sure. What happened next was tender and passionate and transformative. Alessio worshipped every inch of her, taking his time, learning what made her gasp and sigh. And when they finally came together, it felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. Afterward, Stephanie lay in his arms, her head on his chest, and Alessio held her like she might disappear. I've never felt like this, she whispered. Neither have I. He kissed her hair. Not even close. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time in 15 years, Alessio slept peacefully. Morning arrived too soon. Alessio woke to find Stephanie sitting at the edge of the bed, wrapped in his shirt, her back to him. Hey, he said softly, sitting up. What's wrong? I need to go. Her voice was tight. Why? He touched her shoulder and felt her flinch. Stephanie, talk to me. Last night was a mistake. The words hit him like a physical blow. No, it wasn't. Yes, it was. She stood, grabbing her dress from the floor. This is too fast, too intense. I can't do this. Can't or won't. Alessio stood too, fighting panic. What changed between last night and this morning? I woke up. Stephanie's hands shook as she tried to zip her dress. I realized how stupid I'm being. Getting involved with my boss, with someone who could destroy me, with someone who's only interested because I'm new and different. That's not true. He moved toward her. Stephanie, you know that's not true. Do I? She finally met his eyes, and he saw fear there. Raw, genuine fear. How do I know you won't get bored? How do I know you won't realize I'm not worth the trouble and throw me away like Travis did? There it was, the wound driving all of this. I'm not Travis, Alessio said firmly. You're worse. You have so much more power to hurt me. Tears streamed down her face. I can't survive being left again. I barely survived it the first time. I won't leave you. Everyone leaves. She grabbed her shoes. I need to go. I'll resign on Monday. This was a mistake. Don't. Alessio caught her arm, gentle but firm. Please, don't run. Let me go, Alessio. No. His voice broke on the word. I love you. Stephanie froze, staring at him. What? I love you. He pulled her close, holding her even as she tried to pull away. I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But I've lived enough years to recognize when something is real, and this is real. You are real. And I'm not letting you run because you're scared. You can't love me. You barely know me. I know enough. He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. I know you're strong and smart and kind. I know you've been hurt, but you're still brave enough to try again. I know being with you makes me feel alive for the first time in 15 years. And I know I will spend every day proving to you that I'm not going anywhere. Alessio, I'm not perfect, Stephanie. I'm possessive and intense, and I have a dangerous life. But I'm yours, completely, irrevocably. Yours, she sobbed, collapsing against his chest, and Alessio held her while she cried. All the fear, all the pain, all the uncertainty pouring out. I'm so scared, she whispered. I know, but I've got you. I won't let you fall. They stood like that for a long time, the morning sun streaming through the windows, and slowly, Stephanie's crying subsided. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. Neither do I. but we'll figure it out together." He kissed her forehead. "Stay. Please stay." Stephanie pulled back slightly, searching his face. Whatever she found there made her shoulders relax. "Okay, I'll stay." Relief crashed through him so powerfully that his knees nearly buckled. "Thank you. But we need to talk, really talk, about expectations, about what this means, about whatever you need." Alessio led her back to the bed, sitting beside her, their hands clasped together. "Ask me anything." She took a deep breath. "What happens at work? Do we tell people?" "We tell whoever you want to tell. I won't hide you, Stephanie, but I also won't make you uncomfortable." "What about the power imbalance? You're my boss. Then you're not my employee anymore." The decision came easily. "I'll move you to a different department under Elena. Same salary, same benefits, but you don't report to me directly. You'd do that?" "I'd do anything to make you feel safe with me." Stephanie was quiet for a moment. "What if this doesn't work out? What if we try and it falls apart? Then we'll deal with it like adults. But I don't think it will." Alessio brought her hand to his lips. "I think you're it for me, Stephanie, the person I was waiting for without knowing it. That's a lot of pressure. I don't mean it as pressure. I mean it as truth." He touched her face gently. "No expectations except honesty. No demands except communication. Just us, figuring this out together." She leaned into his touch. "I'm still scared." "That's okay. I'm scared too." The admission surprised him, but it was true. "I'm terrified of hurting you, of failing you, of proving your fears right." "Then we're both scared. Then we'll be scared together." Stephanie kissed him, and this time there was no panic, no running. Just trust, fragile but real. They spent the weekend in his penthouse, talking and touching and learning each other. Alessio told her about his childhood in Sicily, about his parents who'd built the family business from nothing, about his rise to power. Stephanie shared stories about her parents, about nursing school, about the dreams she'd had before life changed them. By Sunday night, something had shifted. The fear was still there, but it was smaller, manageable, overshadowed by growing trust. Monday morning, Alessio made good on his promise. He called Elena into his office before Stephanie arrived. "I need you to take Stephanie under your direct supervision," he said without preamble. Elena raised an eyebrow. "Because you're dating her?" "Yes. No point denying it. I want to avoid any appearance of impropriety." "That's wise." Elena smiled slightly. "She's good, you know. Smart, hard-working, kind to everyone. You chose well." "I know." Alessio felt warmth spread through his chest. "Take care of her, Elena. She's important to me." When Stephanie arrived, Alessio explained the change privately. She was relieved, he could tell, and grateful that he'd thought of it. "Thank you," she said, kissing his cheek, "for respecting my concerns." "Always." The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Stephanie worked under Elena's direction, excelling at every task. Alessio took her to dinner 3 times a week, slow, careful dates where they talked and grew closer. On weekends, she stayed at his penthouse, and they built something real. But the outside world was starting to notice. One evening, leaving a restaurant, a photographer snapped pictures. The next day, gossip sites ran headlines. "Mysterious American woman captures reclusive billionaire's heart." Stephanie was mortified. Alessio was furious. "I'm sorry," he said, pacing his office while she sat on his couch. "I should have anticipated this. It's not your fault." But she looked shaken. "I just didn't expect to be news. I'll have my lawyer shut it down." "No." She stood, touching his arm. "That'll make it worse." We just ignore it. But ignoring it became harder when the attention escalated. Strangers recognized her on the street. Reporters called her phone. Someone even showed up at her apartment building asking questions. Alessio doubled her security without telling her, but it wasn't enough to ease the knot of worry in his chest. Then, 3 weeks into their relationship, everything changed. Stephanie was leaving work late one evening when a man approached her in the parking garage. Alessio's security detail was there, watching, but they couldn't intervene without revealing themselves. "Stephanie," the man said, and she froze. Alessio watched through the security feed, his blood running cold as he recognized the face from the investigator's report. Travis Mitchell, her ex, the man who'd abandoned her. What the hell was he doing in Milan? Through the security feed in his office, Alessio watched Stephanie turn pale, her whole body going rigid as Travis approached. Every protective instinct screamed at him to get down there, to put himself between Stephanie and this man who'd hurt her. But he forced himself to wait, to watch, giving her the chance to handle this herself. "What are you doing here?" Stephanie's voice came through the audio, shaky but controlled. "I heard you were in Milan. Saw the photos online." Travis smiled, but it looked practiced. "You look good, Stephanie. Really good. You need to leave." "I just want to talk. 5 minutes." He stepped closer, and Stephanie stepped back. "I made a mistake leaving you. I was young, stupid. I couldn't handle the grief and I ran. But I've grown up. I want another chance." Alessio was already moving, his phone pressed to his ear as he headed for the elevator. "Keep eyes on them. If he touches her, intervene immediately." By the time he reached the parking garage, Stephanie was still talking to Travis, her arms crossed defensively. "Don't care if you've changed," she was saying. "I've moved on." "With some old Italian guy?" Travis laughed, cruel and dismissive. "Come on, Stephanie. What does he see in you except a young body? You're a novelty to him." Alessio saw red. He crossed the garage in long strides, his presence making Travis spin around. "You need to leave," Alessio said, his voice deadly calm. "Now." Travis's eyes widened, recognition and fear flickering across his features. "You're Moretti, and you're trespassing." Alessio moved to Stephanie's side, his hand settling possessively at the small of her back. "My security team is giving you 30 seconds to walk away. I suggest you use them. This is between me and Stephanie. There is no you and Stephanie. There's only me and Stephanie." Alessio stepped forward, using his height and presence to force Travis backward. "You abandoned her when she needed you most. You don't get to show up now and pretend you have any claim to her." "She told you about that?" Travis looked at Stephanie. "You're airing our private business to strangers?" "He's not a stranger," Stephanie said quietly. "And you stopped having any right to my private business when you left." "I said I was sorry." "No, you didn't." Her voice strengthened. "You showed up talking about second chances without once apologizing for what you did, without acknowledging how much you hurt me." Alessio watched her stand tall, watched her face her fear, and pride swelled in his chest. "Stephanie, please. Leave, Travis. Go back to Detroit. Go back to whatever life you built without me. Because I'm building a new one here, and you're not part of it." Travis's expression hardened. "You'll regret this. When he gets bored and throws you away, you'll regret it." "Get out," Alessio said, his patience exhausted, "or I'll have you removed in a way you won't enjoy." 2 of his security team materialized from the shadows, and Travis paled. He backed toward the exit, throwing one last look at Stephanie before disappearing. The moment he was gone, Stephanie's knees buckled. Alessio caught her, pulling her against his chest. "I've got you," he murmured into her hair. "You're safe." "How did he find me?" Her voice shook. "How did he even know where I work?" The photos, the news coverage. Alessio cursed himself for not anticipating this. I'm sorry. I should have protected you better. This isn't your fault. She pulled back, looking up at him. You came. Of course I came. The moment I saw him on the security feed, I was already moving. He cupped her face, searching her expression. Are you okay? I think so. She took a shaky breath. I stood up to him. I told him no. You were magnificent. Alessio kissed her forehead. So strong. I didn't feel strong. I felt terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. He guided her toward his car. Come on, let's go home. At his penthouse, Stephanie curled up on his couch, while Alessio poured her wine and called his head of security. I want Travis Mitchell on a flight back to America by morning, he said, voice cold. I don't care how you make it happen. Make it clear that if he ever contacts Stephanie again, the consequences will be severe. He hung up and joined Stephanie on the couch, pulling her close. Will he leave? She asked quietly. He'll leave. Alessio's tone left no doubt. I'll make sure of it. She was quiet for a long moment. Thank you for letting me handle it first, for not just swooping in immediately. You didn't need me to fight your battles. You needed me to be there if you fell. He kissed her temple. I'll always be there to catch you. Stephanie turned to face him, her eyes searching his. What he said about you getting bored will never happen. Alessio cut her off firmly. Stephanie, you're not a novelty to me. You're not a phase. You're the woman I want to wake up next to every morning and fall asleep holding every night. You're the person I want to build a life with. We've only been together a few weeks. I don't need more time to know what I want. His hand found hers, threading their fingers together. I know I'm older. I know I come with complications. I know I'm probably more than you bargained for. But I also know I love you, completely, irrevocably, and that's not going to change. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I love you too. I've been trying not to, trying to protect myself, but I can't help it. You're everything I didn't know I needed. Alessio kissed her, slow and deep, tasting her tears and her trust. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Move in with me, he said. Stephanie blinked. What? Move in with me. Officially. Bring your things. Make this place yours. Be here when I come home every night. He pulled back to meet her eyes. I want you here, Stephanie. Always. That's a big step. I know. And if you're not ready, I'll wait. But I wanted you to know, I'm all in. This isn't casual for me. She studied him, emotions flickering across her face too quickly to read. Then she smiled, soft and genuine. Okay. Okay? I'll move in with you. She laughed at his expression. What? You thought I'd say no? I thought you might need time to think about it. I've spent 3 weeks thinking about nothing except you and us, and whether this is real. She touched his face. It's real. I know it's real. So yes, I'll move in with you. Alessio kissed her again, gratitude and joy flooding through him. When? How about this weekend? Perfect. They spent the evening making plans, Stephanie listing what she'd need to bring, Alessio mentally rearranging his space to accommodate her. It felt domestic and wonderful, and so far from the cold, controlled existence he'd maintained for 15 years. By the end of the week, Stephanie had moved into his penthouse. Her books lined his shelves, her clothes filled his closet, her presence transformed every room. The space that had felt like a museum became a home. Alessio found himself rushing back from meetings just to see her, coming home to find her curled up on the couch reading, or cooking in his kitchen, or singing softly while she worked. It filled something in him he hadn't realized was empty. One evening, 3 weeks after she'd moved in, Alessio came home to find candles lit throughout the apartment and music playing softly. "What's this?" he asked, smiling. Stephanie emerged from the bedroom wearing a simple dress, her hair loose. "I wanted to do something nice, to thank you." "Thank me for what?" "For saving me, for loving me, for giving me a home." She moved into his arms. "For being everything I needed, even when I was too scared to accept it." Alessio held her close, breathing in her scent. "You saved me too, you know. I was just existing before you, going through the motions. You made me want to live again." They danced slowly in the candlelight, and Alessio thought about how much his life had changed in 2 months, how one woman had walked into that private room and awakened something he thought was dead forever. "I want to take you somewhere," he said suddenly. "Now?" "This weekend. A villa I own in Tuscany. Just the two of us, away from the city, away from everything." He pulled back to look at her. "Would you like that?" "I'd love that." Friday afternoon, they drove to Tuscany, the landscape rolling past in shades of gold and green. The villa sat on a hilltop overlooking vineyards, stone and terracotta and ivy-covered walls that had stood for centuries. "It's beautiful," Stephanie breathed, stepping out of the car. "It was my grandmother's." Alessio guided her inside, through rooms filled with antique furniture and family history. "She left it to me when she died. I haven't been here in years." "Why not?" "Too many memories. Too much happiness that felt like a lie after Isabella's betrayal." He opened doors onto a terrace overlooking the valley. "But with you here, it feels different. Like I'm reclaiming something I lost." They spent the weekend wrapped in each other, talking and laughing, and making love in the old villa's bedroom. It was peaceful in a way Alessio's life rarely was. No business calls, no security concerns, just them. Sunday morning, Stephanie woke before him and slipped out to the terrace. Alessio found her there, wrapped in his shirt, watching the sunrise paint the valley gold. "Hey," he said softly, joining her. "Hey." She leaned into him. "I could get used to this." "So could I." He kissed her hair. "We could come here more often. Weekends, holidays. Make new memories." "I'd like that." She turned to face him. "Alessio, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "What happened with your wife? The real story, not the official version." Alessio tensed, old guilt rising. "Why do you want to know?" "Because you still carry it. I see it sometimes in your eyes, when you think I'm not looking. Whatever happened, it still hurts you." She touched his face. "I want to understand." He was quiet for a long moment, watching the sun climb higher. Then, slowly, he told her the truth. "Isabella was beautiful and charming and completely wrong for me. Our families arranged the marriage, merging business empires, strengthening alliances. I tried to love her. I thought I did, for a while." His voice hardened. "But she never loved me. She loved the money, the status, the power. And when my business partner offered her more, promised, too, take her away to start fresh, she jumped at the chance." "That's when you found them together?" "Yes. In our bed, in our home. She'd been stealing from me for months, siphoning money into accounts I didn't know about. They were planning to disappear." Alessio's hands clenched on the terrace railing. "I destroyed him, ruined his business, his reputation, drove him out of the country. And Isabella, what happened to her? My enemies found out about the affair. They saw an opportunity to hurt me, to create chaos in my organization. They went after her." He met Stephanie's eyes. "I didn't order it. But I didn't stop it either. I was so angry, so betrayed, that when I heard she was dead, I felt nothing. And that emptiness terrified me more than anything. Stephanie was quiet, processing. That's why you've been alone all these years. I couldn't trust anyone, couldn't let anyone close. I built walls so high that nothing could get through. He pulled her into his arms. Then you walked into my life and demolished every single one like they were made of paper. I'm not her, Stephanie said firmly. I'm not interested in your money or your power. I fell in love with you despite all that, not because of it. I know. He held her tighter. That's why this terrifies me. Because losing you would destroy me in ways Isabella never could. Because you matter, Stephanie. You matter so much that it scares me. I'm not going anywhere. She pulled back to meet his eyes. I know you're scared of being betrayed again. But I promise you, Alessio, I'm here. For real. For keeps. He kissed her deeply, pouring all his fear and hope and love into the contact. When they broke apart, something had shifted. A weight he'd carried for 15 years felt lighter. They returned to Milan Sunday evening, and Alessio felt renewed, ready to face whatever came next. But he should have known peace never lasted long in his world. Monday morning, Stefano appeared in his office, expression grim. We have a problem. Alessio looked up from his paperwork. What kind of problem? The Rinaldi family. They're making moves against our shipping operation. 3 of our containers were seized last week, and word is they had inside help. The Rinaldi family. Old enemies. Dangerous and persistent. Alessio's expression hardened. Do we know who helped them? We're investigating. But boss, this is serious. If they're targeting our operations, they might target you personally. Stefano's gaze was pointed. Or people close to you. Ice settled in Alessio's stomach. Stephanie. She's a known connection now. The photos, the publicity. Anyone looking to hurt you would see her as an opportunity. Alessio was already reaching for his phone. Double her security. Immediate effect. I want someone with her at all times. Already done. Stefano shifted uncomfortably. But you should talk to her. She needs to know about the danger. No. The word came out hard. I won't scare her unnecessarily. Alessio. She has a right to know. I said no. I'll handle the Rinaldi situation. She stays safe and ignorant. He met his cousin's eyes. That's not up for discussion. Stefano left, disapproval clear on his face, and Alessio stared out his window at the city. He'd sworn to protect Stephanie, to keep her safe. Telling her about the Rinaldi threat would only frighten her, make her a target in ways she didn't need to be. Better to handle it quietly. Eliminate the threat before she even knew it existed. But secrets, Alessio would learn, had a way of destroying trust faster than any enemy could. That evening, he came home to find Stephanie cooking dinner, humming along to music, completely unaware of the danger circling. The contrast between her peaceful domesticity and the violent reality of his world struck him hard. Hey, she said, smiling when he entered the kitchen. How was your day? Fine. He kissed her, trying to push away the worry. How was yours? Good. Elena has me working on the new Tokyo expansion. It's fascinating. She turned back to the stove. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. Alessio watched her move around his kitchen like she belonged there, and the protective urge intensified. He'd do anything to preserve this, to keep her safe, happy, ignorant of the darkness that came with loving him, even if it meant keeping secrets. 2 weeks passed in tense normalcy. Alessio managed the Rinaldi situation quietly, increasing security, reinforcing operations, preparing for conflict. Stephanie noticed his distraction but attributed it to work stress. You seem worried, she said one night, curled against him in bed. Just business complications. Nothing to concern yourself with. He kissed her forehead. Everything's fine. She accepted the answer, and guilt twisted in his gut. But keeping her in the dark was safer. Had to be safer. Then, one Friday evening, everything unraveled. Alessio was in a meeting with his security team when his phone rang. Stephanie's number. "I need to take this," he said, stepping into the hallway. "Stephanie." "Alessio." Her voice shook. "There are men outside the building, watching. One of them followed me from work." His blood ran cold. "Where are you?" "The lobby. Your doorman let me wait here." She was trying to sound calm, but fear leaked through. "Who are they?" "Stay there. I'm on my way." He was already running. "Don't leave the building. Don't talk to anyone. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The drive took 8. Alessio burst into the lobby to find Stephanie sitting on a bench, his doorman standing guard. She jumped up when she saw him. "Alessio," he pulled her close, scanning the street through the glass doors. "Did they approach you?" "No, just watched. But it was obvious. Deliberate. Like they wanted me to know." She pulled back, searching his face. "What's going on? Who are these people?" The moment of truth had arrived, and Alessio knew he couldn't lie anymore. "Come upstairs," he said quietly. "I'll explain everything." In his penthouse, Stephanie stood by the window while Alessio paced, gathering his thoughts. "I've been handling a business conflict," he started. "A rival family making moves against my operations. I thought I had it contained." "A rival family?" Stephanie's voice was sharp. "You mean like mafia?" Alessio stopped pacing. "Yes." She stared at him, the word hanging between them. "You're involved with the mafia." "I am the mafia, Stephanie. Or was. I've spent years going legitimate. But the old connections, the old enemies, they don't just disappear." "And you didn't think to mention this?" Her voice rose. "You didn't think I had a right to know I was dating someone with mob ties?" "I wanted to protect you." "By lying?" She laughed, bitter and sharp. "By keeping me ignorant while people watched me, followed me, decided I was worth targeting." "I was handling it," Alessio said, frustration bleeding into his tone. "I had security on you. I was eliminating the threat. Without telling me. Without giving me a choice about whether I wanted to be involved in this world." Stephanie's hands shook. "God, Alessio, who are you? Really?" "I'm the same man who loves you." "Are you?" "Because the man I love wouldn't lie to me. Wouldn't put me in danger without warning me. Wouldn't treat me like some fragile thing that needs protecting instead of a partner who deserves honesty." The accusation hit hard because it was true. Alessio had been treating her like something to protect rather than someone to trust. "You're right," he said quietly. "I should have told you. About my past, about the danger, about everything. I was wrong." Stephanie's eyes filled with tears. "I can't do this. I can't be with someone who keeps these kinds of secrets. Stephanie, please." "No." She grabbed her purse. "I need space. I need to think. Don't leave." He moved toward her. "It's not safe. Then have your security follow me. But I can't stay here right now." She walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. "I love you, Alessio. But love isn't enough if there's no trust." She left, and Alessio stood frozen, his world crumbling around him. Then he grabbed his phone. "Follow her. Keep her safe. But give her space." His voice was rough. "And someone find out who those men were. I want names by morning." He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. He'd known this could happen. Known that his world and hers couldn't coexist without consequences. But he'd hoped, foolishly, desperately, that love would be enough to bridge the gap. Now, sitting in his empty penthouse, Alessio realized he'd made the same mistake he'd sworn never to make again. He'd let someone in, and it was destroying him. Stephanie spent the night at a hotel, security team hovering discreetly outside her door. She barely slept, her mind spinning with everything she'd learned. Alessio was connected to the mafia, had been, still was in some ways, and he'd hidden it from her, put her in danger without warning her. But he'd also loved her, protected her, given her safety and security, and a home when she'd had nothing. The contradiction twisted her heart in knots. By morning, she still didn't have answers. Her phone had 17 missed calls from Alessio, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. Not yet. Not until she figured out what she wanted. A knock on her hotel room door made her jump. She checked the peephole. Elena, Alessio's assistant, holding coffee and pastries. Cautiously, Stephanie opened the door. "May I come in?" Elena asked gently. Stephanie stepped aside, and Elena set the food on the small table. "Alessio sent you," Stephanie said flatly. "Actually, I came on my own." Elena sat down. "He doesn't know I'm here. He's been in his office all night, looking like death. But he'd never forgive me for interfering." "Then why are you?" "Because I've worked for Alessio for 12 years. I've seen him at his worst, cold, ruthless, unreachable, and I've seen him since you came into his life." Elena met her eyes. "You've changed him, Stephanie, made him human again, and I think you deserve to understand who he really is before you give up on him." Stephanie sat down slowly. "Tell me." Elena told her everything. About Alessio's rise to power after his father died suddenly, leaving him to run the family empire at 26. About the necessary alliances with dangerous people, the choices he'd made to protect his family's legacy. About Isabella's betrayal and how it had broken something fundamental in him. "He spent 15 years building walls," Elena said, "keeping everyone at a distance, being ruthless because he thought it was the only way to survive. Then you appeared and knocked down every single wall in a matter of weeks. He lied to me. He tried to protect you. It was wrong, but his intentions were good." Elena leaned forward. "Stephanie, Alessio has never brought a woman to his office before. Never introduced anyone as his girlfriend. Never let anyone into his life the way he's let you in. You're not just important to him. You're everything." Tears filled Stephanie's eyes. "I don't know if I can live in his world, with the danger, the secrets, the constant threat." "That's a fair concern. His world is dangerous. But he's been working for years to go legitimate, to separate himself from the darker aspects of his past. The Rinaldi situation is an echo of old conflicts, not his current reality." Elena stood. "Talk to him. Let him explain. Then make your decision with all the information." After Elena left, Stephanie sat with her coffee, thinking. She loved Alessio. That truth was undeniable. But love without trust would poison everything eventually. She needed to talk to him, needed to hear the full truth. Then she could decide if they had a future. Stephanie showed up at Alessio's office at noon. He was standing at his window, hands in his pockets, and turned when she entered. The exhaustion on his face made her chest ache. "Stephanie." Her name came out like a prayer. "We need to talk, really talk. No more secrets." He nodded, gesturing to the couch. They sat, careful distance between them, and Alessio took a deep breath. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Your past, your present. What threats are real, what danger I'm actually in." She met his eyes. "And why you thought lying was better than trusting me with the truth." Alessio talked for over an hour. He told her about his family's business, how it had started legitimately, but expanded into gray areas during Italy's turbulent political years. How his father had made deals with powerful people, both legal and illegal, to survive. How Alessio had inherited not just wealth, but obligations, connections, enemies. I've spent the last decade trying to clean it up, he said. Selling off, questionable assets, ending old alliances, going completely legitimate. But some people don't want to let go. The Rinaldi family made their fortune in partnership with mine 40 years ago. When I cut ties, they took it as betrayal. So they're targeting you now. They're testing me, seeing if I've gone soft, if they can push me around. His jaw tightened. When they saw you, they saw leverage, a weakness they could exploit. Fear curled in Stephanie's stomach. They'd hurt me to get to you. They'd try. They won't succeed. Alessio's voice turned hard. I have you protected 24 hours a day. No one gets near you without going through my security team first. You're safer than you've ever been, Stephanie. But you should have told me, her voice broke, instead of keeping me in the dark, treating me like I couldn't handle the truth. You're right. I should have trusted you. He reached for her hand, stopping when she pulled back. I was scared, terrified that if you knew the full truth about me, you'd run. And I couldn't lose you. Not when you'd become the most important thing in my life. That's not how partnerships work, Alessio. You don't get to decide what I can handle. You don't get to make choices for me. Tears streamed down her face. I survived my parents dying. I survived being abandoned. I survived poverty and loneliness and starting over in a foreign country. I'm stronger than you think. I know you are. His voice was rough. I know. And I still tried to protect you instead of trusting you. That was my mistake. And I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. They sat in heavy silence, and Stephanie felt the weight of the decision in front of her. She could walk away, go back to her simple life, avoid the complications and danger that came with loving Alessio. It would be safer, easier. But it would also be lonely, empty. Without the man who'd given her home and safety and love when she'd needed it most. If we do this, she said finally, if we try again, things have to change. Complete honesty from now on. No more protecting me from the truth. You treat me like a partner, not a possession. Hope flickered in Alessio's eyes. Anything. Whatever you need. And I want to understand your world, really understand it. The business, the people, the threats. I can't be blindsided again. I'll tell you everything. He moved closer, still not touching, but present. I'll introduce you to my people, explain my operations. Be completely transparent. You'll never be in the dark again. Stephanie searched his face, looking for any hint of deception. She found only raw honesty and desperate hope. Okay, she whispered. We can try again. Alessio exhaled like she'd given him oxygen after drowning. Thank you. God, Stephanie, thank you. She let him pull her close then, burying her face in his chest, as he held her, like she might disappear. I love you, she said against his shirt. But Alessio, if you lie to me again, we're done. No second chances. I understand. I swear to you, no more lies. No more secrets. He kissed her hair. Just us. Honest and real. They stayed like that for a long time, and slowly, Stephanie felt the tension drain from her body. This wasn't perfect. There would be challenges ahead, danger to navigate, trust to rebuild. But it was real, and it was theirs. Over the next few weeks, Alessio kept his promise. He introduced Stephanie to Stefano and his other key people, explaining the structure of his organization. He showed her the legitimate businesses he'd built, the real estate holdings, the restaurants, the import company that had nothing to do with illegal activity. And he told her about the Rinaldi situation, how he was negotiating an end to their conflict, offering them lucrative but legal business opportunities in exchange for peace. Violence is always an option, he explained one evening over dinner. But it's not my first choice anymore. I'm trying to build, Something different. Something you can be proud to be part of. I'm already proud of you, Stephanie said. Not because of your empire or your power. Because of who you are underneath all that. The man who rescued me, who believed in me, who loves me enough to change. Alessio took her hand across the table. You're the reason I want to change. The reason I want to be better. By the end of the month, the Rinaldi situation had been resolved. A deal was struck. They'd get distribution rights to Alessio's restaurant supplies, a profitable arrangement that satisfied their pride without compromising his values. The men watching Stephanie disappeared. The threat lifted. Life settled into a new normal. Stephanie continued working with Elena, excelling in her role. Alessio took her to business events, introducing her as his girlfriend, with pride that made her blush. They spent weekends at the Tuscany villa, building memories in the old stone walls. One Saturday morning, 3 months after they'd reconciled, Alessio woke to find Stephanie gone from bed. He found her on the terrace, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sunrise over the vineyards. Can't sleep, he asked, joining her. Too much thinking. She leaned into him. Good thinking, though. About what? About us. About the future. She turned to face him. Alessio, I want to go back to school. Finish my nursing degree. Surprise flickered through him. In Milan? There's a program at the university. It would mean evening classes, studying on weekends. But it's something I gave up when my parents died, and I think I'm ready to try again. Pride swelled in his chest. Then you should do it. Absolutely. You don't mind? It'll mean less time together. I mind that you had to give it up in the first place. He pulled her close. But I'm thrilled you're getting it back, and I'll support you however you need. Tuition, books, time, whatever it takes. She kissed him, soft and grateful. Have I told you lately that I love you? Not in the last 5 minutes. I love you, Alessio Moretti. You infuriating, protective, wonderful man. I love you too, Bellissima. He held her close, the morning sun warming them both. More than I thought possible. Stephanie started classes in September. The first few weeks were challenging, balancing work, school, and their relationship. But she managed with determination that impressed everyone around her. Alessio made sure she had everything she needed, including a quiet study space in the penthouse and flexible work hours. One evening, while she was buried in textbooks, Alessio's phone rang. Stefano's name flashed on the screen. What is it? Alessio answered, moving to his study. We found something. About Stephanie's ex-boyfriend. Alessio's hand tightened on the phone. I thought he left the country. He did. But before he left, he contacted the Rinaldi family. Tried to sell them information about Stephanie, about you, about your relationship. Rage, white-hot and consuming, flooded through Alessio. What kind of information? Her routines, where she worked, details about her past. Nothing they couldn't have found themselves. But he tried. Stefano paused. The Rinaldis turned him away. Apparently, even they have standards about using rejected ex-boyfriends. Where is he now? Detroit, back to his old life. But boss, I thought you should know he tried to hurt her, tried to put her in danger out of spite. Alessio closed his eyes, breathing through the fury. Thank you for telling me. What do you want to do about it? Everything in Alessio screamed for revenge, for making Travis Mitchell regret ever thinking about hurting Stephanie. But that was the old Alessio, the one who solved problems with violence. The new Alessio, the man Stephanie was helping him become, had other options. Nothing, he said finally. He's pathetic and desperate. Going after him would give him more importance than he deserves. You sure? Yes. He's already lost the best thing that ever happened to him. That's punishment enough. Alessio looked through the doorway at Stephanie, bent over her books, completely absorbed. I have better things to focus on. After hanging up, Alessio returned to the living room. Stephanie looked up, smiling. Everything okay? Everything's perfect. He sat beside her, pulling her close. How's studying going? Brain is fried, but I'm making progress. She closed her textbook. I could use a break. Good. I have something I want to ask you. Something in his tone made her sit up straighter. Okay. Alessio took her hands, suddenly nervous in a way he hadn't been since he was 20. These past few months with you have been the happiest of my life. You've changed everything. My priorities, my goals, who I want to be, and I don't want to waste any more time. Alessio. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Stephanie's breath caught. I know we've had challenges. I know my world is complicated and sometimes dangerous. But I also know I want to spend the rest of my life with you, protecting you, supporting you, loving you. He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring. Marry me, Stephanie. Be my wife, my partner, my everything. Tears streamed down her face. You're serious? Completely, irrevocably. Serious. He smiled through his own emotion. I'm 55 years old. I know what I want. And I want you. Forever. Yes. The word burst out of her, joyful and certain. Yes. I'll marry you. Alessio slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like tears and laughter and perfect happiness. When they broke apart, Stephanie was shaking. I can't believe this is real, she whispered. It's real. You're mine, I'm yours, and we're building something beautiful together. He kissed her forehead. Nothing is going to change that. They were married 2 months later in a small ceremony at the Tuscany villa. Elena stood as Stephanie's witness, Stefano as Alessio's. The priest who'd baptized Alessio as a child officiated, and the vows they exchanged were simple but profound. I promise to be honest, Alessio said, holding both her hands. To trust you with my truth, even when it's hard. To protect you without smothering you. To love you without trying to own you. To be the partner you deserve. I promise to be brave, Stephanie said, tears in her eyes. To stand beside you in your world, even when it scares me. To trust you with my heart, even though it's been broken before. To love you without holding back. To be your home, as you've been mine. When the priest pronounced them married, Alessio kissed her with all the love and promise of their future, and the small gathered group applauded. The reception was intimate, just close friends and family, tables set up in the villa's garden, good food, and better wine flowing freely. As the sun set over the vineyards, Alessio pulled Stephanie onto the makeshift dance floor. Happy? He asked, swaying with her. Deliriously. She rested her head on his chest. Though I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Nothing's going wrong. Not today, not tomorrow. Not ever if I can help it. He kissed her hair. You're stuck with me now, Signora Moretti. She laughed, the sound pure joy. I like the sound of that. They danced until the stars came out, and later, in the villa's master bedroom, they consummated their marriage with tenderness and passion that left them both breathless. I love you, Stephanie whispered in the darkness, curled against his side. I love you too. Alessio held her close, his heart full in ways he'd never thought possible. Thank you for choosing me, for staying, for believing we could make this work. Thank you for fighting for me, for changing for me, for showing me what real love looks like. They fell asleep tangled together, and Alessio's last thought before drifting off was that he'd finally found what he'd been searching for all his life. Peace. Home. Love. 6 months into their marriage, Stephanie finished her nursing degree. Alessio was in the audience when she walked across the stage, pride making his chest tight. After the ceremony, he swept her into his arms. "I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without your support." She kissed him. "Thank you for believing in me. Always." He pulled back slightly, a small smile playing at his lips. "I have a graduation present for you." "Alessio, you've already given me too much. It's not material." He guided her to a quiet corner of the campus. "I've been talking to the hospital near our house. They have an opening in their emergency department. It's yours if you want it." Stephanie's eyes widened. "Seriously? You didn't work this hard to not use your degree, and emergency nursing is what you always wanted to do." He touched her face. "So, yes, seriously. The job is yours." She threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at once. "You're amazing. Have I mentioned that lately?" "Not in the last hour." Stephanie started her nursing job 2 weeks later. The work was demanding, the hours long, but she loved it. Alessio adjusted his schedule to accommodate hers, making sure they still had time together, despite their busy lives. One evening, after a particularly grueling shift, Stephanie came home to find candles lit throughout the penthouse and soft music playing. "What's this?" she asked, smiling tiredly. "You've been working so hard. I thought you could use some relaxation." Alessio took her bag, guiding her to the bathroom where a hot bath waited, rose petals floating on the surface. Stephanie's eyes filled with grateful tears. "You're too good to me. Impossible. You deserve the world." He kissed her gently. "Take your time. I'll have dinner ready when you're done." As she soaked in the tub, Stephanie thought about how much her life had changed. A year and a half ago, she'd been dancing in a club, drowning in debt, alone and afraid. Now she was married to a man who loved her completely, working her dream job, building a life she'd never imagined possible. It wasn't always perfect. They still had disagreements, moments of frustration, challenges to navigate. But they faced everything together, with honesty and trust and commitment. After her bath, wrapped in a soft robe, Stephanie found Alessio on the terrace with dinner laid out, her favorite pasta, good wine, fresh bread. "This is wonderful," she said, sitting across from him. "You're wonderful." He raised his glass. "To you, Mrs. Moretti, the strongest, most incredible woman I know." They clinked glasses, and as Stephanie took a sip, a wave of nausea hit her. She set down the glass quickly, hand going to her stomach. "You okay?" Alessio was immediately alert. "Yeah, that was weird." She took a breath, the nausea passing. "I'm fine." But it happened again, next morning, and the morning after that. By the third day, Stephanie had a suspicion. She stopped at a pharmacy on her way home from work, bought a test, and locked herself in the bathroom. 2 minutes later, she was staring at 2 pink lines, her heart pounding. Pregnant. She was pregnant with Alessio's child. Joy and terror warred in her chest. They'd talked about children someday, but vaguely, something for the future. This was real, immediate, life-changing. When Alessio came home that evening, he found her sitting on the couch, the test in her hands. "Stephanie." He crossed to her immediately. "What's wrong?" She held up the test wordlessly, watching his face as comprehension dawned. "You're..." His voice broke. "We're having a baby?" "Yes." She searched his expression for any hint of regret or fear. "Are you okay with this?" Alessio dropped to his knees in front of her, taking her face in his hands. "Okay. Stephanie, I'm overwhelmed, terrified, completely unprepared, and absolutely thrilled." Relief flooded through her. "Really, really." He kissed her gently. "We're having a baby. A child. Our child." His hands moved to her still flat stomach. This is the best news I could have imagined." Tears streamed down Stephanie's face. "I was so scared you wouldn't be ready. I'm 56 years old. If I'm not ready now, I never will be." He pulled her into his arms. "Thank you. Thank you for this gift, for this future, for everything." They sat like that for a long time, processing the news, and Alessio felt something settle deep in his soul. This was what he'd been building toward. A family. A legacy built on love instead of violence. A chance to be the father he never had the opportunity to be. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Alessio was attentive to the point of being overbearing, insisting Stephanie reduce her work hours, rest more, eat better. She tolerated it with amused patience, knowing his protective instincts were in overdrive. At 6 months, they learned they were having a girl. Alessio wept when he saw her on the ultrasound. This tiny, perfect life they'd created together. "She's beautiful," he whispered, holding Stephanie's hand. "She's going to be so loved." Stephanie watched the screen, their daughter moving and stretching. So protected and cherished and safe. "Always," Alessio promised. "I'll make sure of it." True to his word, Alessio spent the remaining months of pregnancy preparing. He converted one of the penthouse bedrooms into a nursery, personally overseeing every detail. He read parenting books, attended every doctor's appointment, talked to their daughter every night through Stephanie's growing belly. And slowly, the last remnants of the cold, distant man he'd been before, Stephanie melted away completely. Their daughter was born on a warm spring morning, after 12 hours of labor that tested Alessio's composure more than any business negotiation ever had. When the doctor finally placed their baby in his arms, Alessio looked down at her perfect tiny face and felt his heart expand impossibly. "Hello, Isabella," he whispered, using the name they'd chosen, a way to honor the past while building a new future. Stephanie reached for them both, and Alessio sat carefully on the bed, their daughter cradled between them. "Our family," Stephanie said, tears streaming down her face. "Our family," Alessio echoed, "complete and perfect." In that moment, holding his wife and daughter, Alessio understood what he'd been searching for all his life. Not power or wealth or respect. Just this: love, family, belonging. And as Isabella yawned, her tiny hand wrapping around his finger, Alessio made a silent vow. He'd protect them both with everything he had. He'd be the husband Stephanie deserved and the father Isabella needed. He'd build a world where they could thrive without fear. He'd already started that work, and he'd never stop. Because love, real, true, committed love, was worth fighting for. Worth changing for. Worth everything. 2 years later, Alessio stood on the terrace of the Tuscany villa, watching Stephanie chase their toddler daughter through the vineyard. Isabella's laughter carried on the warm breeze, pure and joyful, and his wife's smile was radiant. This was his empire now. Not buildings, or money, or power, but these two precious people who'd given him purpose. Stephanie caught Isabella, swinging her up into her arms, and they both turned toward him, waving. Alessio waved back, his heart full to bursting. He'd been broken once, shattered by betrayal and loss. He'd rebuilt himself as something cold and hard, convinced he'd never feel again. Then a young woman with tired eyes had walked into a private room, and everything changed. She'd awakened something in him he thought was dead. She'd taught him to trust again, to love again, to hope again. She'd given him a family and a future he'd stopped believing was possible. And as Stephanie and Isabella walked back toward the villa, toward him, Alessio knew with absolute certainty that every moment of pain in his past had been worth it, because it had led him here, to this woman, this child, this life. To love that conquered fear, conquered power, conquered everything. And that, Alessio thought as he opened his arms to embrace his family, was the greatest victory of all.